This is Jambo Radio.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to the show. The Science Show with Dr. Dada. Great. Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of The Science Show with Dr. Dada on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the city of Glasgow. Today, we're going to be focusing on a branch of STEM that is huge, and that is imaging technologies. We will focus specifically on the intersection between imaging technologies and quantum technologies. Of course, a lot of this is still very much science as it is technology, but as we progress with the show, you are going to be learning a lot about that. As you know, when we talk about quantum, most of the time when we involve quantum in a particular thing, it tends to be a little bit magical. And that's why in most sci-fi movies, when they try to explain something that's a bit magical, like, traveling faster than the speed of light, or maybe teleporting people from the surface of a planet to the spaceship, or vice versa, the sci-fi writers often like to explain this in terms of quantum. They say it's based on some kind of quantum mechanical effect. So anyway, imaging. It turns out that in reality, there are some sort of magical effects that we can actually observe in the laboratory that are based on quantum mechanics. And in particular, it allows you to do something that's called ghost imaging. And perhaps maybe there's even a non-quantum version of that, but we'll hear a lot about that on today's show. And that's why the title of today's show will be A Haunted Quantum World. Yes, a haunted quantum world. Of course, that's playing on the idea of ghost imaging, And I don't know what it is about quantum. There's the spooky action at a distance as well, isn't it? So, there seems to be something spooky and, haunted about the quantum world. Well, we'll be exploring that today on the show. And the question of the week is, what is a quantum ghost? So we'll leave that with you. Oh, yes. Very haunting indeed. We'll leave that with you to think about as we develop this topic. Well, I am Dr. Adetunmise Dada. I'm a lecturer in optics at the University of Glasgow. And on this show, we'll be talking about STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. That's what we love on this show. That's what we're always talking about on this show. Of course, we have fun as well. And that's why we'll be looking at this topic from the lighter side as well. This is the Science Show on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting live from Glasgow. Don't forget, you can listen to us also through DAB, digital audio broadcasting, that is from home or in the car. And you can also listen and watch us live online at jamboradio.co.uk. Also, episodes are uploaded onto the Jambo Radio YouTube channel, so you can catch up with past episodes that way as well. Fantastic. So, what are we going to be actually looking at on today's show? Well, we'll be starting as usual with the science news highlights. And then we'll have the first part of our interview with our guests, where we'll be getting to know them. We'll be getting to know what the background is and what they're into, what they've been into in the past as well. And then we'll be getting to a discussion of the topic, A Haunted Quantum World, where we'll be focusing on spooky action at a distance and also quantum imaging and ghost imaging. And then we'll have another round of the interviews, which will be looking at the research activities performed by our guests and also some of the projects that they're involved in. And then at the end, as usual, we'll be enjoying a few science jokes. And you won't want to miss this. We'll be singing a song or, maybe a rap. We'll see how it goes, but we'll be kind of doing a freestyle to a beat, and it will be all about, quantum and ghost imaging and the rest of it. So we'll see how that works out. So please stay with us to the end. You won't want to miss that. Great. So let's have a quick introduction of our guests. With us in the studio today, we have Mr. Osian Wolley. I hope I'm saying that correctly, Osian. Osian is a PhD student at the University of Glasgow. He's with the Glasgow Optics Group in the School of Physics and Astronomy. We also have Dr. Stephen Johnson.
Hello.
He's also a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Glasgow, also from the School of Physics and Astronomy and the Glasgow Optics Group. So how are you both doing today?
Good, thank you.
Stephen and Osian.
Very well, thank you.
Fantastic. It's really good to have you in the studio, and we look forward to a very, very enjoyable discussion. So, again, the question of the week for our viewers and listeners: what is a quantum ghost? So keep that in mind. It'll be interesting to see what you can come up with before we actually explain the answer, the scientific answer to that. Great. So let's get into our science news highlights. So today on our highlights we have 4 headlines. The first one is quantum, which is very nice. Quantum batteries, strange technology that could provide instant power. Instant power. Think about that. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. The second one, 2 potentially habitable super Earth planets have been discovered. Wow. And then the third one, next generation of hearing aids could read lips through masks. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? And then finally, University of Glasgow welcomes CT to new building with Arcadia Festival. Yes, this is something close to our hearts. Those of us in the studio, we'll explore that in a moment as well. Okay, so on to the first item then. Quantum batteries, strange technology that could provide instant power. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? Something from a sci-fi movie. Think about it. Each time, I know the frustration, each time my battery runs out of juice, my phone battery runs out of juice, it's the wait is very unpleasant, isn't it? Even if it's 10 minutes, 30 minutes, we always kind of grieve that time that we're kind of waiting for our phone to turn back on. But although that seems like a laughable reaction, there is a serious side to this, isn't there? When it comes to, batteries that power things like electric vehicles and so on. So, and the fact that it takes these cars, it takes hours to charge them is a major stumbling block for the transport industry and in particular for decarbonizing that industry. So this is a very interesting welcome piece of news, which shows that there's a potential by leveraging a bizarre property of quantum mechanics called entanglement. Quantum batteries could theoretically recharge in a flash. So you won't have to wait. You just plug in your phone, boom, and it's charged. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, this is a result that has come out recently. In fact, in previous studies, researchers have already calculated that a quantum battery technology could reduce the home charging times of electric cars from, say, 10 hours to just 3 minutes, while supercharger stations could fully recharge a vehicle in just 90 seconds. And if successful, this whole idea of instantaneous charging using quantum effects, the scientists hope that an era of ultra-efficient batteries will arrive, transforming the way we use everything from smartphones to electric cars. Now, this latest research was detailed in a study entitled "Micromasers as Quantum Batteries," and it's published in the scientific journal Quantum Science and Technology by the Institute of Physics. So you can read more about that there. Now, another one from New Scientist: 2 potentially habitable super Earth planets have been discovered. So maybe it's not time to start packing our bags yet, but a pair of rocky planets orbiting the star Speculus 2. It's said that it seems likely that these planets are in the habitable zone, and one of them could be the second most habitable exoplanet discovered so far. If you've been following this show, you'll probably know what an exoplanet is. Of course, it's a planet that orbits a star that's different from our sun, so outside our own solar system. So these two planets, they're called Speculus. They are named after the star that they orbit, which is Speculus 2. But these two newly discovered planets are called Speculus 2b and Speculus 2c. Now, only a few details are known about Speculus 2c beyond its size and the 8 days it takes to orbit the star, which is really a short year. So, we would be maybe 100 times, hundreds of years old on that if you were living on a planet like that, because the year is only 8 days. And also the fact that, these planets are 100 light years away. Of course, again, on this show, you know what a light year is, which is the amount of distance traveled by light in 1 year. So it's 100 light years away, so far away. So maybe it's not so easy to get to. But researchers at the University of Birmingham in UK who spotted this new planet, they hope that the James Webb Space Telescope might one day tell us more about whether it has an atmosphere and what that atmosphere actually contains. So this could inform us about the planet's potential to host life. So this is very interesting news. So another detail about the planet, Speculus 2c has a radius that is about 30 to 40% larger than the Earth's radius, and it takes, as I said earlier, about 8 days to orbit its star. So some interesting fun facts there. Now the next item, next generation of hearing aids could read lips through masks. Wow, that's interesting, isn't it? So this is actually from the University of Glasgow, based on research done at the University of Glasgow. So it says a new system capable of reading lips with remarkable accuracy, even when speakers are wearing face masks, could help create a new generation of hearing aids. An international team of engineers and computing scientists developed the technology, which pairs radio frequency sensing with artificial intelligence for the first time to identify lip movements. Now, of course, hearing aids that can focus on a specific conversation by combining sound with using AI for reading lips is something new, and this is actually cutting-edge research done at the University of Glasgow. So the paper was published September 7 in the journal Nature Communications, and you can read more about it there. The University of Glasgow-led team in that paper outlined how they set out to harness the cutting-edge sensing technology to read lips. And also they say that the system preserves privacy by collecting only radio frequency data and not video footage. So that's interesting as well. And finally, on our news highlights, University of Glasgow welcomes city to new building with Arcadia Festival. Yes, this is going to be a very interesting festival. It says people from across Glasgow and beyond are being welcomed to a brand new community space at the University of Glasgow with a 2-week festival of free events. The newly opened Mazumdar Shaw Advanced Research Centre, or ARC for short, will play host next month to the Arcadia Festival of Ideas. Actually, that's this month now. And this festival will feature brass bands, will feature a retro video game arcade, comedy shows, and an outdoor killie. So that's going to be fun. There will be art exhibits there as well, and a VR, virtual reality celebration of Robert Burns, and much more. Now, Arcadia runs from Friday, that's this Friday, September 16th, until Friday, 30th of September. And it aims to establish the ARC as a significant contributor to everyday life in Glasgow's West End. So, you're welcome to come along. In fact, the Arcadia Festival manager, Dr. Zara Gladman, said, and I quote, "Many events are being led in partnership with groups outside the university, from charities to local businesses and artists. The ARC is a new focal point for Glasgow to come together, share ideas, and shape the future of the research happening here. Arcadia is just the beginning, and I hope to see you there." So it turns out that actually our guest, that is Osian and Stephen both work in the Ark. So yeah, this is really close to home, and I do some work in the Ark as well. So that brings us now to our interview. So the first part of our interview will be getting to know Mr. Osian Wolley. So once again, it's nice to have you, Osian, in the studio with us today. So would you like to maybe start by telling us about your background, about your family life, where you were born, where you went to school, what you studied, some of the things that guided it. So perhaps we can start with that, about your background.
Yeah, of course. So thank you for having me on first. As you're saying, I'm Osian Wolley. I grew up in a small town in the northwest of England called Crewe. And that's where I spent the first 18 years of my life. It was kind of quite a boring existence. It was a very small town, but very nice, but not much going on. So I spent the first 18 years there. I went to school just locally, and originally I wanted to be a doctor, or maybe my parents wanted me to be a doctor. I'm not sure which one around it was, but eventually I decided that I actually liked physics instead. And that's what I enjoyed. So when I was 18, I went moved down south to Bristol to study physics there, and that was big. That was good fun being in a big city with lots going on. And had a really good time studying physics there. And I did a master's project on quantum technology. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now, where after I'd done my master's, I moved up to Glasgow during the middle of the pandemic, which was quite a weird experience. To start my PhD here. So I've been here for 2 years now, working in the optics group, and I've been really enjoying Glasgow, having a good time with my research and working in Glasgow. So.
That's nice, really nice. Thanks for sharing that with us. I noticed two things we have in common. One is that you wanted to be, the original plan was that you were going to be a medical doctor.
Yeah.
It's the same story for me as well. And the other thing was that you spent some time in Bristol.
Yeah.
Because I did as well. So that's nice. And now we're in Glasgow.
Yeah.
So, fantastic. So what would you say inspired you then to, do STEM?
Yeah, so, I think one of the things was I always liked STEM even from when I wanted to be a doctor. And I think I always had a enjoyment of understanding how the world worked. And I think especially physics was good for that, because it really gives you an understanding of how how at the basic level, how everything behaves and how everything works. And I was just very drawn to that, and also kind of weirdly, but quite like maths, but maybe not weirdly for us, because we're all physicists. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed being able to explain things, and I like the objectiveness of science. I thought that was quite nice. So.
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah, it's nice to know. I mean, even if it's, estimated, it's nice to know that there's an answer,
yeah,
right?
Deep down, you can find an answer. You don't have to debate
Exactly. There are laws and they lead to an answer.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that as well. Fantastic. So that's, I know with science, it's a lot of work, to work in STEM. It requires a bit of work, and you need to have something that moves you to want to do that work. Mm-hmm. And that's the inspiration. That's where it comes in, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, great. Fantastic. So this is a random question for you. Mm-hmm. If there were 3 things you could be granted as wishes of what to discover, what would they be?
Oh, it's quite a difficult question.
I know it's not. I know it is actually, but it's meant to be an easy question.
Yeah.
But you can say one. You can say one if there's just the one that you.
I think one thing I'd like to discover is something that helps people. So like, especially I think one way as a physicist, and especially what I do with imaging, one way you could help people is discover something which would have an application in biology, which could potentially help save lives and help doctors to do their work. So maybe some piece of medical imaging technology or biological imaging technology would be really interesting to discover.
Yes.
And then maybe something as well to help the climate crisis. I think that's another issue that's quite close to my heart. So I think if I could develop something, there's some things like gas imaging technologies which are quite new, that could help stop gas leaks and prevent emissions. That would be another cool thing to invent or work on. So that'd be another thing.
Fantastic. I know on this show I've asked this question. I asked a couple of researchers this question, and I think the thing about it is you're free to it's a wish, okay?
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be something that's realistic, necessarily, but something that you would, if you wish you could solve, or something that you wish you could discover. And I really agree with you. I think those things you mentioned are quite would be good things to find solutions to as well. Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And now we're going to take a music break, and we'll enjoy a song that I actually had a hand in making as well. Produced the song. It is by Zubam, and it's entitled LOL. Enjoy. We'll be right back.
London.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, da, da. Da, 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 yeah. Da, da. Follow me through the story of God. This boy come tell me, say that he likes me. He said, baby, I want you. There's no one inside you in my life. I want to be with you. But I love you. No be joke, does she get you? I don't need you in my life for the heart breaks that see me. Buru 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 gawa. Oh, oh, na 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 na. Oh, oh. If I was falling, would you be standing? If I need a saving, you're not here to love me. Oh, love me. Oh, love me. Oh, love me. See, I'm on a lifetime race. I'm on a lifetime page. What are you hoping for? Is it a lifetime place? Or you want to block my space? Mr. Barricade, I ain't got no time for this. Are you tripping? You pleading? Ha ha ha. But I love you. No be joy, cause she got you. I don't need you in my life for time breaks and you don't see me. Buru 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 gawa. Oh, oh, na 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 na. Oh, oh. If I was falling, will you be standing? If I need a saving, you love me.
Nice. This is the Science Show on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting live from Glasgow. You can listen on DAB, and you can also listen and watch us live at www.jamboradio.co.uk. And of course, episodes are uploaded on the Jambo Radio Scotland YouTube channel as well. Great. So let's continue with our discussion now. This time we're going to have a little chat with Dr. Stephen Johnson. We're going to get to know Stephen a little bit. Once again, it's really nice to have you with us in the studio today, Stephen. And again, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background, your early life, where you went to school, and how you got to where you are today, which is, as a researcher in STEM?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. I was born in nearby Birmingham, and then went to high school, enjoyed the science lessons probably more than anything else, and then went to university to do physics. So at the University of Birmingham was where I did my undergraduate, and then I did a postgraduate at Birmingham as well. And so there I studied cold atoms, which is a whole other area of physics, where you're cooling down atoms to really, really low temperatures. So absolute zero is minus 273 Celsius, and we call that 0 Kelvin because we move our temperature scale. And so you're at micro Kelvin, and at this point atoms are barely moving. And so that's where I did my PhD. At the end of that, I decided I wanted to leave academia, so I went to work for a company making imaging devices. So there's only one place in the UK that makes imaging sensors. So when I say imaging sensors, I mean in your phone, the camera, there's some lenses and then there's a bit of silicon, and the light landing on that silicon, that's the image sensor. And most of these are made in fabrication places in Taiwan and China and things, But in the UK, we made very high spec ones. So they would be things that would go into very expensive cameras, or they would go into satellites and things. And so we would work with ESA and NASA. And so those devices that you would have from pictures of space, a lot of them were built in Essex in the UK, which is quite cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So I decided I then wanted actually to come back to research and join the University of Glasgow. And I've been here about 5 years, so working in the same group as Denise. And I've been researching there and doing optics and all sorts of interesting things since.
Yes, that's really nice. And some of these things I didn't know before as well, which is really nice to hear. So, what's your experience been like then doing STEM? I find it interesting to speak with ones who have been a little bit in industry and then come back into actual doing research. So, what's that been like for you?
It's interesting. It's the different motivation that the different people have. In university, we're doing research because we think it's really interesting.
Yes.
Usually in a university, it's a professor that has some clever idea, and they go, well, is this correct? And can we actually prove that this is true? So you really get a huge amount of freedom to do what you want. In industry, we were paid to do things. We were paid to make the devices. And it was really good fun. It was really interesting, and it was great to be part of that system that within we knew that we were just making little bits of silicon, but eventually they were going to get launched into space and they were going to be able to see things. When I was at the company, they had the fly past of the New Horizon mission. So that was the first pictures of Pluto that were any good. And so it was really cool to be in a company that built that 30 years ago, and it took that long to get to Pluto to actually take the images. But still someone had to be paying for it, and you couldn't do that's partly why I came back to academia, because I wanted that freedom to look into things myself.
I see. Thanks for mentioning that. I was going to ask. That's really interesting. Wow. Fantastic. A real privilege to be part of that as well, isn't it? So, can I ask you the same question as well, the same random question, which is, if there's, and it's okay if it's the same thing as, has been said, but if you could be granted a wish to discover 3 things, what would they be?
So one of them, there is a huge question in science, which is quantum mechanics describes a lot of things, and we have some good understanding of how quantum mechanics works. And that we look at things on small scales and how little things interact. There's the other end of the spectrum, which is gravity and what controls the orbits of the planets and how the universe is expanding and all these things. And scientists haven't actually figured out the bit in between. Though these are 2 completely separate theories, and actually bringing them together, it's a huge question and way beyond my ability and my intelligence, I think. I think cleverer people would have to do it. But it's still that really fascinating question.
That's so modest of you.
But I suppose closer to Earth, I suppose part of what I like to think I'm doing is, can you see through walls? So there's various ways you could do that. You could drill a hole. That's pretty easy. And so some of the work we do at Glasgow is actually having a very, very small needle and imaging through a very, very small needle, and that has medical applications as well. You can see through walls with different, not using light, but use something called terahertz radiation. So this is a slightly longer, so you have radio waves and you have light, and this is actually the same stuff. It's still electromagnetic radiation.
Yes.
Terahertz is somewhere in the middle, and actually at that point you can start to see through walls, and that's a really interesting technology that people are developing.
Okay, great. While you're developing that, could you develop one where you can walk through walls as well?
That's a little bit harder. That's a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, just joking. So, talking of walking through walls, we've come to our discussion, a haunted quantum world, where we'll be exploring the question of the week: what is a quantum ghost? Okay, so we'll be inviting Osian as well onto this discussion, and let's see what we come up with. So, I guess the first question on the mind of a lot of our viewers and listeners will be, what is a quantum ghost? Do ghosts, are you saying ghosts actually do exist, and so on? So, what is a quantum ghost then? Guys, any offers?
Firstly, we're talking nothing supernatural. This is all, as far as I'm aware, there is no proof of ghosts actually existing. You can't. Okay, there's haunted houses and things, but when you send a scientist in with all sorts of measuring equipment, they never turn up. There's no actual proof of this. Whereas a quantum ghost is something that we have seen. We've built it in the labs that we work in. And it's something there, and it's all based on the properties of quantum mechanics of how we can image these things.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you. So that's a very good answer and simple answer to the question that, we all understand. Very good. Now, we're going to go a little bit deeper. So, does it have anything to do with spooky action at a distance? Because that's another thing that you hear about quantum, right?
Yeah.
Or
So there's something in quantum mechanics called entanglement. So you can have two particles, two photons of light that are entangled. They have certain properties they share with each other, and by knowing about one, you can know about the other. And that's the basis for quantum imaging. We have two photons, two particles of light. We know what one of them is doing, and so we actually split these two photons off. One we would send to our picture, what we wanted to look at. The other one goes off to a detector. And so we have a camera on one end, and so one of the photons hits that, and so that tells us where that photon is. Yes. The other one goes off. If we see it on a detector behind our image, so let's say we're looking at a stained glass window or something, the bits that hit the lead in the stained glass window aren't going to go through. The bits that hit the glass are going to go through, and we're going to see on the detector. And it's using those two measurements we can build up the entire picture. And you need lots and lots of photons. So when we see day to day, we've got millions and billions of photons hitting our eyeballs and hitting the sensor in the back of our eye. And so we need to do that with cameras. But these photons are difficult to make, so we have to work in the 1,000 photon level, tens of thousands of photons. So the images can look a bit grainy, but it's proving the point as opposed to making a really nice clean image.
Yes, thank you very much for that very nice explanation. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Where you have a situation where, you have a field of light or a beam of light illuminating an object. And although you don't have a camera, you don't actually have a camera, you have something like what's called a bucket detector, right? And basically that just tells you, it doesn't resolve the image. It just gives you information whether the light went through or not, basically. And by measuring another arm, you can actually recreate the image, although the light on the other beam didn't interact with the image. You don't have a camera on the side where the image is. That's really mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah, so the fundamental thing is the light that you're producing the image with has never interacted with the object.
Yes, and that's where the ghost aspect comes in.
That's where the ghost comes in.
Like the image just appears, if you like. Fantastic. So what's the most, where's the research on ghost imaging at the moment? Like what's new and what's the most advanced form? What form does it take these days? To
bring it up to work that I'm currently doing in the lab,
which of course, yes,
and measurements I was doing yesterday, what I'm trying to do is see if I can send an image without other people being able to see it. So this is slightly turning the whole ghost imaging thing around and saying, well, if I know about one of these photons, can I send the other one to someone else? And if I can tell them a little bit of information about that one photon, can they reconstruct the image?
Yes.
And so this is what we're trying to do. So we have a very special camera, which we can tell it, take a picture now, and it takes a picture, but it only takes it for 10 nanoseconds. So you've got, in a second, you've got 1,000 milliseconds. In 1 millisecond, you've got 1,000 microseconds. And in 1,000 microseconds, you've got, 1,000 nanoseconds, you've got a microsecond.
So you have, is that a billion then?
So yes, so it's going to be 10 billionths of a second we turn our camera on. Whenever that photon arrives, And so we do that lots and lots and lots of times, and we can see the image. If we didn't have the information about the other photon, you wouldn't see anything. It's be blinded by the other light in the room. So we can do this with the room lights on, and so there's lots and lots of light around in the room, but they're not going to the sensor because we can only look in this short period of time based on these other photons.
Yes, that's really, really interesting. It's what's called coincidence detection, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Coincidence detection. Interesting. So, Osian, so at the moment you're undertaking your PhD, right, at the University of Glasgow. So, what are you like? What's a typical day like for you?
Yeah, so day for me is typically, well, first thing I do is always, in our group, we always end up wasting the first hour having a coffee together and having a chat, which is a good use of time. But after that, it's kind of into the lab. So as a PhD student, usually typically the bulk of the experimental work will fall onto the PhD students. So the professor comes in with an idea and he says, okay, build this. So that's my job usually for the day, is kind of fiddling around, aligning things and making sure the light beam's going in exactly the right place. And anything with light is incredibly fiddly because we're talking like, microns, which is, as Steve was saying, like a billionths of a centimetre, nanometre precision you need to align these things to. So it's very, very fiddly work, but it's rewarding when you get it done, and it feels good when you finally got something set up. So yeah, so most of my day is kind of spent in the lab and aligning things, and then taking data, writing up results, writing papers, which is always quite fun to do. So that's kind of my typical day. So
wow, that's interesting. Optical alignment is very, very important, isn't it? In what we do. Wow, fantastic. So, do you have any advice for someone who might be considering something like a studentship in quantum, or maybe quantum imaging, for example, or quantum technologies in general? Yeah,
well, I'd say firstly, definitely do it. It's good fun, and it's exciting to work on, kind of cutting edge stuff. And I think quantum is also, it's very exciting science. It's this cool things of ghosts and imaging things that aren't there and looking through walls, which is really fun. So I'd definitely say first do it. The other advice is I think you have to maybe be quite a patient person. As I was saying, that this stuff takes ages to set up, and even the results take sometimes, one of my colleagues had an experiment where they had to wait 3 months for the data to come back. So, it's all about kind of patience and taking your time and taking it slowly. And another big thing is don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, because they're probably not as stupid as you think they are. And otherwise you'll just get lost and stuck on your own. But it's good to use all the people around you and get help when you can.
Yes, I really like the point you made about the patience, because it's really important stuff, right? So this is like the basis of future technologies, and you really need to get it right. So that's a really good point. So now let's explore your the other aspects of your personalities. So would you like to share with us what hobbies do you have? Maybe we can start with Osian.
Yeah, so I quite like my sports. I like my running. I used to play a bit of football. I've stopped playing, but I need to get back into it. I enjoy my like rock climbing as well. That's the thing I do. And I also quite like music. So I play guitar usually. That's my kind of main thing. But I like listening to music and I like playing music. So that's my kind of hobbies.
Maybe you'll give us a wee.
Yeah, maybe.
All right. What about you, Stephen?
Very outdoorsy person.
Nice.
So regularly walking up hills, doing the Munros, which in Scotland are the mountains above 3,000 feet or 914 metres, and sort of working through those at the moment. But otherwise, it's spending time with the family, spending time with the dog is also really important.
I agree. Absolutely agree with that. Great. So let's have another music break. And this time we're going to listen to another song by Tana Musica entitled Kule. I had a hand in preparing this song as well. So let's see how it sounds.
It is a Tana Musica. Tana Musica. It is a Tana Musica. Tana Musica. Go make you feel alright, yeah. I go make you feel okay, yeah. After the cool. My body in the cool. My body is a groove. My body is a woman. Yeah. Oh.
Ain't nobody gonna talk to me. I take some time for myself, oh yeah. I'm just trying to escape until I know that day. So call me tomorrow, cause if you call me now, we no go. No time for no fo. It's time for Olingo. Because my body is the cool. My body is the cool. My body is a groove. My body is a groove. My body is a moving. My body is a moving. I'm vibing to the music. So stay happy in the morning, oh. Whether you dey live in the city, oh. Whether you walking on the TT, oh. Just keep it grooving. Cause the world is turning. I know you hear the music playing, oh say, I got to keep on dancing, oh na daily. My body is the cool, my body is the cool, my body is a groove, my body is a groove, yeah. My body is a groove, my body is a move. I'm vibing to the music. Well, this is the Science Show on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting from the city of Glasgow. Of course, remember you can listen to us on DAB, and you can also listen and watch us live at jamboradio.co.uk. Episodes are also uploaded to the Jambo Radio Scotland YouTube channel. So now we've come to a very fun part of the show, and it's to do with science jokes. We're going to be enjoying some science jokes with our guests. So I have a one or two jokes as well, but do you have any jokes to share with our listeners? Any science jokes?
I've got a science joke. And it involves ghosts as well, actually.
Ah, fantastic.
Okay.
So the thing is, you tell us the joke.
Yeah.
But you also tell us why it's funny.
You have to explain the joke.
Yes. So go for it.
Okay. What did the ghost professor say to his students? Got any ideas?
Work.
No. He said, "Look carefully at the board now while I go through it again."
Right. Well, I'm not sure. Could you explain?
Because he's a ghost,
joke?
he can go through the board.
Sorry, again?
He can go through the board because he's a ghost. So he says, "Look carefully now while I go through it again."
Right. I see.
It's a terrible joke.
Yeah, no. All science jokes, I think, are terrible. But you kind of have to. The fun is that you kind of have to explain why it's funny, right? So, any other ones?
Yeah, okay, I think I have one. Why does the photon not need to take any luggage with him? Because he's travelling light.
He's travelling light.
Very good.
Yes, that's a good one as well. Fantastic. Thank you. So, yeah, if you know, well, unless you don't know what a photon is, you get that one, wouldn't you? Yeah, it's quite a good one as well. Great. So I've got 2 or 3 here. Let me. So the first one says, people at my work are subject to quantum effects. You see where this is going? They're subject to quantum effects. They behave differently if a supervisor is observing. I think most people maybe are quantum in that case, right? So of course that's just playing on the fact that a quantum system changes when it's observed, in general anyway. So that's quite interesting. And then the other one says, what message does a quantum computer have when you view an image? This is kind of building on, it's a similar sort of principle as the first one. So what message does the quantum computer have when you view an image? Do you want to save changes? You get it? So basically a quantum computer or a quantum system, again, if you view it, you've changed it.
Yeah.
So it's going to ask you, okay, you've changed it now. But normally on a computer, you just open it without making any changes. It doesn't ask you, do you want to save changes? So that's, another of the science jokes. And the last one I've got, why did the quantum physicists have such toned abs?
I don't know.
If you go to the gym, maybe this would be, you'd have an idea with this one. Should I say the answer?
Yeah.
Because the Planck constant.
Okay, yeah.
So who would like to tell us what a Planck constant is and why it's?
So Planck constant it's one of these constants in physics, and it links all sorts of things. So fundamentally, it links the energy that a photon has to its wavelength, to its what color of light it is. So actually, we find that red light has lower energy than blue light, and we understand this is all linked by Planck's constant.
Yes, exactly. And Planck constant, it's like when you Planck, you kind of get good abs, right? So that's why quantum physicists have such toned abs, apparently. Great. So the interesting thing about quantum mechanics jokes is that they can be incredibly funny and incredibly unfunny at the same time. A superposition of funny and not funny. So that's supposed to be another joke, by the way. But anyway, this is the Science Show on Jambo Radio Scotland, broadcasting live from Glasgow. And now we've come to the final part of today's show, which is the STEM song or STEM rap. We'll see how this goes. Yeah. Great. So I've got a beat that I've kind of titled Rap Your Research. So the idea is to encourage researchers or people who work in STEM to rap about STEM, STEM subjects. So let's see what we can come up with. I'll play it a little bit, and if you've got any lines or any bars you'd like to drop, feel free. Okay. I've written 1 or 2 lines down myself. So please, can we have the beat, DJ? Thank you. So that's it. Anything come to mind? Should I go?
You start us off.
Okay. Mini, miny, mo. Where are my photons? Where'd they go? And when the crystal starts to glow, coincidences, here we go. No diligence, no coincidences. Walk the thing, no sitting on fences. Nimble fingers don't damage the lenses. Otherwise, extra research expenses. Something like that. But yeah, I didn't put any ghost imaging in that, Okay, let's go again. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. Ghost imaging, very interesting. Past envisaging, useful for sensing. As long as you can measure light. A camera with high sensitivity. Bucket detector, no resolvability. Imaging with joint probability. Something like that. Yeah, that needs more work. So I think the homework for us is to make a song on ghost imaging, right? Okay. And we do that to the beat. And hopefully we can do that on another episode of the show. And that brings us to the end, to the close on this week's edition of the Science Show with Dr. Dada. And remember, if you'd like to keep your eye on the happenings and advancements and developments in the world of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, and the impact these are having on daily life, or maybe just to learn 1 or 2 things about science-related activity going on here in Scotland, then this is the place to be. So feel free, please email us with any questions you may have or comments on today's show at info@jamboradio.co.uk, and do check our homepage www.jamboradio.co.uk/science show, rather the science show, and there you can find news and updates from this show. Thank you very much once again for listening to this week's edition of The Science Show on Jambo Radio. And also would like to once again thank our guests, Dr. Johnson and Mr. Wolley, for being with us in the studio today. And of course, we also like to thank the production team here, Baron and Zainab Arowoshere. And next week, we hope to have another interesting edition of The Science Show with Dr. Dada and another special guest on the show. So please tune in to us same time next week for another exciting edition of The Science Show with Dr. Dada. And until then, stay curious.